How did you come to be with Justin Johnson on November 17th, 2021? We were aware that they had a hit on Dolph Skull, or whatever. Who was hit on whose head, then? Big J has a thing for Doll's head or something. How did you find out that Big Jug had a crush on Dolphin? I had heard about it from Quit. You understand what I mean when I say Quit. Then, what was the expected amount of money? $100,000. Young Dolph will be killed for $100,000. It is said that after Big Juke posted that bounty, someone posted one on him. However, no one anticipated what Yo Gotti did when he musically confronted his brother's murderer in that prison visiting room. The blood, the beef, the empire. Let me take you inside one of the most spectacular and explosive moments in the history of hip-hop. A musical moment that no one anticipated. We're talking about Memphis rap entrepreneur Gotti, who is sitting atop an empire valued at more than $100 million, entering a chilly prison visiting room with a burning desire for vengeance. The man who created CMG from the ground up entered the room prepared to take a blood sample. However, we had to rewind the tape and dissect every aspect of this narrative in order to really grasp the scope of what music went down. Memes about Mario Jaiden originated from less than nothing. Dreams went to die in the rigorous housing developments in Memphis, Tennessee. Before anyone knew his name, young Mario was making tapes out of trunks and grinding through music in the late 1990s with underground mixtapes like From the Dope Game to the Rap Game. He became well known because of his 2012 CD Live from the Kitchen. Additionally, the entire culture was captured in 2016's Down in the DM. All of a sudden, music. Yo Gotti was more than a local rapper. He was well known throughout the country. However, this is what sets Yo TTY apart from rappers who were popular but then vanished. This man was constructing a complete empire. Over the course of the following 10 years, Collective Music Group, which was formerly known as Cocaine Music Group, became an unstoppable force in the music industry. Moneybagg Yo, Black Youngsta, Glorilla, and ESDG were signed by CMG. CMG gained business strength through partnerships with Interscope Records. Music. Yo Gotti expanded his holdings by investing in real estate and the DC United soccer team. While others were playing checkers, the man was playing chess. A music general is now necessary for every empire. For CMG, that general was Yodi's elder brother, Anthony Big Juck Mims, who was born about 1976 and served as the unseen foundation of everything CMG dealt with. As CMG's de facto number 2 executive, Big Juke was in charge of talent hunting, promotions, street-level music transactions, and all the grunt work that couldn't be linked to Yodi's impeccable corporate image. Big Juke is frequently spotted in music videos, showing off on social media, pulling up in opulent whips, and sporting fashionable clothing. He was regarded as a big homie of the north side of Memphis, a person who was equally feared and respected. This is where the narrative becomes unclear, though. For years, there were rumors that Gotti kept his hands, music, clean for the record executives and cameras, while Big Juke handled the violent, deadly side. These weren't rumors about idols, repeated in barbershops and anonymous comments on the internet. They were ingrained in the culture. It was obvious what was implied. Big Juke was a musical fist, while Gotti was the face. The brothers' relationship was forged in the flames of poverty and criminality. Seeing friends and family killed by violence while growing up in Memphis taught me early on that loyalty was the only thing that mattered. When Gotti discussed their relationship in public in 2020, she said, "My brother has been my rock. He taught me the game." Those words would later take on a sinister, new significance. However, at that precise time, they depicted two brothers who had worked together to create something and who would support one another all the way through. But the game Big Juke taught was going to become lethal. Then came young Dolph, Adolph Thornton Jr., the commander of the Paper Route Empire, who stood for all things independent in Memphis rap music. Dolph wasn't your average rapper. He was a movement, a rejection of the system of labels. The Paper Route Empire came to represent independence. Music. Dolph apparently declined a CMG deal in 2014, opting instead to remain independent, sparking the conflict between CMG and PR. Music. What began as a commercial dispute turned fatal. The diss tune took off. Yo Gotti's street credibility was directly targeted by Dolph's 2017 track Play With Yo. __. Gotti's team retaliated with a fancy party and subliminal shots. Bullets began to fly as some people muttered that it was fake meat for streaming. Young Dolph's SUV was hit more than 100 times in Charlotte in 2017, but Dolph managed to live. Another attempt was made in Los Angeles later that year. Once more, he made it through. Big Juke was accused of being the orchestrator by the music streets, but there was no proof. Yo Gotti said nothing. In a widely shared video, he responded to criticism by saying, "I don't go back and forth on the internet. You're never going to win." Fans labeled him a rat and said he was manipulating people. One of the most watched beefs in hip-hop was a conflict between CMG and PR. No one could have imagined what would happen next. Then November 17th, 2021 arrived. In Memphis, young Dolph entered Makida's music, cookies, and stayed there. The streets erupted, and everyone shuddered when the names were revealed during the start of the murder trials. Okay, so Justin Johnson's next attempt to make fun of this doll was a joke that was shared with the entire studio for the remainder of the year. Let's prepare some. Yes, it says that. It says that. I take it that's July 9th. Yes. All right. Since we discussed contacting Juke on July 31st in the slideshow, the connection was revealed when they said, "Call Juke. We're about to go shoot somebody." Music. Johnson was immediately dropped by Justin. Wasn't a lone shooter. He was speaking with Big Juke directly. Music. In court, the defense lawyer dissected it. Johnson texted Big Juke. Phone conversations that connect them. All of the evidence strengthens the argument that this hit was planned from the top down. It appears on November 16th, 2021 at 17:37, 15 hours. It appears that Justin Johnson called Anthony M. for 31 music seconds. Your slideshow was much finer. To display all the components in length, I simply went in and grabbed the actual CDR item. Justin Johnson called Anthony Mims for 331 seconds. Big Juke is at 5.5 minutes on the phone on November 16th. Music, 2021. The day before young Dolph was killed. What were they talking about? Although the prosecution presented a clear image, there is more to it. Coded language was exposed in the SMS messages. Justin Johnson, the Juke, is the sender of this text. Would you please allow him to testify about that? Indeed, Your Honor. From whom are the texts coming? It's from Anthony Mims to Justin Johnson Music. And even though I am aware that there are multiple texts, I am worried about just one. I'll begin with the first one. Big Juke received direct text messages from Justin Johnson. However, prosecutors contended that these exchanges demonstrated the preparation and coordination of a murder for advancement conspiracy that would completely upend Memphis. The response to the defense's question concerning whether police had ever attempted to interrogate Big Juke about his ties to the suspects was instructive. We've discussed everything, including the hardware store. Have any of you attempted to interview Joe in relation to Juke? Indeed. When did you attempt that with music? When we carried out a search warrant on his phone, that is. All right, while he was at the airport. All right, the fact that you had spoken to him was not noted anywhere. According to the police reports, the main detective claimed that you guys never made contact with him. At the airport, they carried out a search warrant on Big Juke's phone, music. But testimony claims that they never properly contacted him to conduct an interrogation. This case would be plagued by issues about why Big Juke wasn't brought in for more in-depth interrogation. Cornelius Smith then stood up. Smith was one of the acknowledged shooters, and his evidence completely changed the course of the case. Smith revealed a shocking detail when questioned how he became acquainted with Justin Johnson on the day of the murder. How did you come to be with Justin Johnson on November 17th, 2021? We were aware that they had a heat on Doc's skull or something. Who was hit on whose head, then? Big J took a hit on the dog's head, or whatever. So how did you find out that Big Jerk was attracted to Dolph? I could stop hearing about it. You understand what I mean when I say quit. What was the expected amount of money? $100,000. $100,000. Big Juke Music is said to have put that on young Dolph's head. The Memphis rap feud became a murder for hire plan due to a $100,000 bounty. According to Smith's testimony, music, Hernandez Gone, the purported middleman who linked the gunman to the funds, told him about this. The revenge, the conviction, and the trials. The Memphis rap scene's dark underbelly was exposed in the trials that followed young Dolph's death, shaking the industry. What came out was a picture of how a street feud turns into planned murder, and how it can be impossible to distinguish between successful music and criminal activity. At the prosecution center, Cornelius Music, Smith's evidence turned into a bombshell. In a September 2024 testimony, Smith Music admitted in graphic detail that he fired the rounds that murdered Little Dolph. For the hit, he received $40,000 music. Considering that he was taking a man's life, it was pitifully tiny. Drug addiction and sadness over the death of his own child combined to create a toxic music combination that drove Smith. He was the perfect candidate to be persuaded to pull a trigger in exchange for cash because he was shattered, weak, and desperate. In his testimony, he described meetings, phone logs, and financial music transactions that linked the streets to the top echelons of CMG. When questioned about financial arrangements with Hernandez Gone prior to the hit, the prosecution painstakingly constructed their case, demonstrating how money went from the top down to the triggermen. Yes, additionally, you previously testified on this. I apologize, Gone. Just be clear, Juke. Doan had already negotiated a $10,000 deal with you before the hit on due. Yes, $10,000 from Jess and me. The conspiracy was closely linked to the money trail. Smith gave $10,000, and Johnson gave $10,000 music. All going through Gone as part of the bigger $100,000 reward that Big Juke is said to have orchestrated music. The prosecution claimed that Big Juke was at the top of the hierarchy and that this was a murder-for-hire scheme. Conspirators were concerned about receiving pay even after Dolph was dead. To be clear, I'll get to that in a moment, but first I want to make sure you received $10,000. You previously discussed it, and he later contacted you to inquire about the 10, because he wanted his money, correct? Even after the murder was over and young Dolph lay cold in the ground, the money talks went on. Everyone concerned wanted their share of the promised blood money. Handling a man's passing as if it were a commercial deal that needed to be properly accounted for and settled. During cross-examination, Smith's credibility was severely damaged. The defense lawyer's music focused on his proven music drug problems as they methodically attacked every facet of his personality and dependability as a witness, portraying a picture of a man so consumed by addiction that his memory and judgment could not be trusted in music. They brought up the fact that his attorney was purportedly paid $50,000 by people with ties to CMG, implying that the same group he was testifying against may have influenced his testimony. The ramifications were devastating. Did Smith tell a story that protected certain people at the expense of others, or was he telling the truth? However, despite these assaults on his character, the defense found it extremely challenging to unravel the web of evidence generated by the phone records, text messages, and corroborating testimony from other witnesses' music. On September 26, 2024, Justin Straight dropped Johnson's trial, which resulted in a conviction that shocked the rap culture in Memphis. Conspiracy, first-degree murder, and being a felon with a firearm. Due to the overwhelming weight of the allegations, the judge sentenced Johnson to life in prison plus an extra 35 years to ensure he would never be free again. Johnson's legal team filed an appeal right once, arguing that the trial was tainted by procedural and evidence difficulties, but the verdict was upheld. The streets of Memphis hummed with one burning question as Justin Johnson was led away from the courtroom in shackles, his future music reduced to concrete walls and barbed wire. Would young Dolph's passing result in reprisals? Who would be the target if such were the case? Almost everyone who followed the music case was taken aback when Hernandez Gone's trial took a drastically different direction. Gone was cleared of all charges pertaining to the death of young Dolph on August 21st, 2025. In fact, Gone benefited from Smith's music testimony, which had been so detrimental to Justin Johnson. Smith's remarks, which more clearly identified Big Juke as the bounty's mastermind, enabled the defense to successfully contend that Gone was being used as a scapegoat, while the true mastermind was already dead and out of reach of the law. For those who wanted music responsibility, the acquittal left a bad taste in their mouths. However, It also brought attention to an important point. Big Juke's claimed misdeeds would never be tried by a jury. Music. In relation to it, Big Juke never had the chance to have his name cleared or condemned in court. Music. Before the court system could determine his fate, the man who was purportedly at the heart of young Dolph's murderous scheme suffered a brutal end of his own. Big Juke was shot and killed in broad daylight outside Perrin Restaurant and Event Center, Music, in the Hickory Hill neighborhood of Memphis on January 13, 2024, at precisely 4:15 in the afternoon. Music. It was an important place. He had recently been to a repast, one of those events where loved ones joined together to honor the life of a departed loved one. Music. The ruthless efficiency of the attack was captured in the scene surveillance camera. From a white Mercedes-Benz, two assassins with devastatingly powerful AK-47 Music style guns emerged. They opened fire on Big Juke, leaving him with no prospect of survival. His body was hit by 22 bullets before the shooters vanished into the Memphis afternoon. It was much too late when Big Juke was taken to St. Francis Hospital. The same ruthless game had claimed the life of the man who had planned acts of violence against others. The timing of Big Juke's murder was too ideal to be accidental. Music. This was cold-blooded, premeditated retaliation. The streets already knew it was a targeted attack, which MPD confirmed. This wasn't a robbery gone wrong or random acts of violence. Simply put, this was an execution. No names have ever been publicly Music identified in relation to the incident, despite police releasing pictures of the suspect car, that white Mercedes-Benz. In his post-quit interview, Hernandez Govan discussed how he found out about Big Juke's passing. Where were you when you learned of Jad's passing, and what impact did it have on you? I believe I was bicycling along the street. I was like, damn, when I received a call. I detested it for Big Daddy, I would detest that for anyone I knew. Big Juke's brutal demise shocked even Govan, the man suspected of acting as a go-between in Dolph's murder. He explained the situation because he was taking a smoke break at a funeral, or, yes, he was at a representative event where they were celebrating life, or something similar. I walked outdoors for a smoke break, and sure enough, there it was, at a repast. Big Juke went outdoors for a smoke break, and that was it. In plain daylight, the streets he had supposedly controlled claimed his life. No one has been taken into custody in connection with Big Juke's murder as of February 1st, 2026. MPD has delayed information due to worries about leaks, but the inquiry is still ongoing. Music. The Memphis community has been irritated by the lack of development, which has led to conjecture about who was responsible. The streets blame PR associates right away. Key Glock, young Dolph's cousin, and other members of the paper route empire were mentioned in whispers, but nothing has been confirmed. The violence that began with Music, Dolph's passing, didn't seem to be ending. January 2026 then arrived. B.O. Lil Kenny, real name Kenneth Watson, a rapper connected to PR and Dolph's associate Music, was taken into custody following a high-speed pursuit involving weapons and drugs. Social media and YouTube channels were ablaze with rumors that this arrest was related to Big Juke's death. Although there is no formal evidence connecting Kenny to the shooting, some believed he boasted of getting even in lyrics. The Reckoning and the Visiting Chamber. This is when the most dramatic, unbelievable, and startling shift in our story, Music, occurs. The event that turned Music from a tragic story of a rap feud gone wrong into something that will be discussed in hip-hop history for many years to come. As Justin Johnson sat alone in a jail cell following his conviction, ready to be transferred to start serving his life sentence, an unexpected event occurred. Something that violated every guideline for how these things should proceed. Even though Yodi had been watching the entire story from a distance, each new development was like a punch to the gut. In courtroom testimony after courtroom testimony, he had witnessed his brother's name dragged through the mud. He had heard the prosecution claim that Big Juke was the brains behind young Dolph's murder, and that his brother had paid $100,000 to kill another man out of rivalry in business and ego. Music. The world was portraying the brother who had taught him the game and been his pillar of support as a heartless murderer. Then Big Juke was killed before he had a chance to defend himself or offer his version of events. In the streets of the city where they had both grown up, 22 Music gunshots were fired outside a funeral, killing them like animals. The fallout was devastating. No suspect had been identified. No arrests have been made. MPD has remained silent, and the internet is overflowing with conjecture. More than 2 years after Big Juke's death, on February 1st, 2026, police had yet to make an arrest. Officially, the investigation was still open, but MPD withheld information, claiming worries about leaks, giving the appearance that they either couldn't solve the case or didn't want to. Everyone in Memphis's rap scene who was hoping for justice, or at least answers, was angry and upset by the lack of progress. According to court filings from 2025, there were rumors of a kill list that went beyond Dolph and purportedly targeted members of the PR roster. These speculations added fuel music to an already blazing inferno. The industry was rocked by the discovery that Big Juck might have intended to target other Paper Route Empire affiliates, and Yodi was apparently heartbroken by the ramifications. There was more than one murder charge against the sibling. According to the accusations, he was responsible for organizing a violent campaign against an entire organization. Whether Yodi accepted those accusations as true or rejected them as fabrications meant to ruin his brother's memory, the damage to him was enormous. And, as is frequently the case, devastation eventually turned into something far darker. Soon after Justin Johnson was sentenced to life in prison, music, Yodi was able to arrange a visit with him, according to people with knowledge of the matter who spoke on condition of anonymity. It's still unclear, and the focus of much conjecture, how he got on the authorized visiting list. Some speculate that Yodi's ties to Rock Nation and CMG's wide network may have contributed to the music industry success. Others claim that large sums of money were traded with prison authorities, who were prepared to turn a blind eye. Prison officials have declined to comment on visiting procedures. Thus, the official narrative is still unclear. A picture of conflict and violence has been built together from disjointed witness statements and leaked internal reports about what transpired in that visiting room. The man who had been found guilty of killing young Dolph was seated across from Yo Gotti, the same murder that Big Juke, his own brother, is said to have planned. The scenario was so ironic that it could be sliced with a knife. This was Yodi's music, confronting one of the men who had carried out a murder that may have been ordered by his own blood. According to reports, the talk began calmly, almost civilly, with music. Two men from Memphis who grew up on the same harsh streets were inextricably tied by the violence that had devastated so many lives and dominated their world. Before everything went awry and conspiracy engulfed him, Johnson allegedly talked music about his hopes of securing a CMG deal. Johnson allegedly signed, "We got him to Big Juke after the shooting," according to testimony presented during the trial. This was American Sign Language, music communication between co-conspirators celebrating the successful execution of their deadly scheme. Sitting across from the man who had sent that message to his deceased brother, Yodi must have kept hearing those words. However, Yodi wasn't present to discuss business. He wasn't there for closure, reconciliation, or any of the other things that grief counselors advise. He was there to find answers to issues that had been bothering him since the day his brother was shot and killed outside that eatery. Big Juke was slain by whom? The hit was ordered by whom? The trigger was pulled by whom? Retaliation had been discussed in the streets all the time, but no names had ever been made public. When Big Juke was killed, Johnson was incarcerated. He, music, knew the players, but he was unable to pull the trigger himself. He was familiar with the game. He was aware of how these things operated and who possessed the resources and motivation. The Memphis entrepreneur made his move, according to witnesses, when Johnson refused to divulge information, or maybe when he said something that pushed Yo Gotti past the breaking point, some term or phrase that disrespected Big Juke's memory. Gotti ended up holding a homemade weapon made from components that were either obtained from within the prison or smuggled into the visiting room. In that instant, the man who had spent years creating a respectable empire, shaking hands with business leaders, and made appearances on magazine covers changed into something much more primordial. The assault was violent and quick, ending nearly before it started. The damage was already done when the guards rushed to separate the two guys in making seconds, using their training. Before Yo Gotti was physically restrained and brought to ground, Johnson suffered many stab wounds on his body, while Gotti was taken into jail handcuffed and escorted away from the mayhem music he had caused. Medical personnel were dispatched right away to stabilize Johnson. Within hours, The story of what transpired in that visiting room went viral on all social media sites, news websites, and gossip blogs. Music. The man who turned CMG into a $100 million empire, formed profitable alliances with Intercope Records, diversified his investments into real estate and professional sports, and upheld his impeccable public music image for decades while his brother was purportedly in charge of the day-to-day operations. In a jail visiting room, that man, Music, had just performed a violent deed that would alter everything. Legal experts started discussing Yodi's potential defense strategy and the charges he would face right away: smuggling illegal goods into a prison, assault with a lethal weapon, and attempted murder. With every hour that went by, the list of possible charges increased as prosecutors evaluated the circumstances and weighed their alternatives. His powerful music lawyers released comments and spoke to media outlets in an attempt to influence the narrative. However, there was very limited opportunity for a denial-based defense strategy given the footage from the security, music cameras in the visiting room, and the witness statements. Following the visiting room incident, the larger background of the recurrent violence in the Memphis rap culture came back into sharp relief. There was more to this than just two men in a room. It was the brutal end of a decade-long conflict between PR and CMG, between Yodi's and Young Dolph's music ethos of independence and the ideology of empire building, a struggle that claimed victims even after both key figures had passed away, one to a prison cell, one to the afterlife. An entire generation of Memphis citizens and artists has been devastated by the community's tremendous toll. Music. A large number of artists have left the city, hesitant to take the chance of becoming the next casualty in an apparently never-ending conflict. One of the most gifted rappers to come out of PRE, and Young Dolph's cousin, Key Glock, is said to have moved away from the streets that had claimed his family member following Dolph's murder. Every year, more than 300 homicides take place in Memphis, a frightening figure that includes many deaths connected to gang connections and rap feuds. The violence is spread from generation to generation like a cursed heritage, creating a vicious cycle that gets worse every year. The complex network of ties that connected these men was described in court by Cornelius Smith, the man whose testimony helped convict Justin Johnson and whose comments implicated Big Juke in the murder for hire plan. Oh, man. Gone. Okay. Furthermore, who is gone? Gone and end. Give up. Chu is how we know him. All right. Chu is who? Oh, Sashi. Okay. Associate, you say. Is he older or younger than you? Older. Which neighborhood does he frequent? I wonder. Orange, ma'am. Does he reside there? Indeed, sir. Yes, he did. Are you aware of the street where his home is located? Oh, that's wonderful. Do you know that street? Indeed, sir. In order to map out the networks that exist in Memphis's most dangerous areas, that testimony traced the connections through neighborhoods, associates, family ties, and street affiliations. The same streets that gave birth to PRE and CMG also gave rise to Yodi and Young Dolph. The blood of their children is now drowning those same streets. For far too many people, the music that was meant to be a means of escape has turned into a route to death or prison. Regarding the future, the entire industry is keeping an eye on the ongoing legal proceedings against Yodi. These are the most uncertain times in his empire's history. Public relations, leadership concerns, nightmares, and the very real chance that it's found will be in prison for years. Since the announcement, CMG artists have mostly kept quiet. Any commentary on the situation was removed from their social media accounts. Their public performances music were canceled or put on indefinite hold. Uncertain about the future of one of hip-hop's most successful music, independent labels, the music industry watches and waits. Everyone on the internet has their own theories and opinions about what happened and what it means, and online speculation has gone completely crazy. Yo's actions are justified, according to some voices. A distraught brother seeking retribution for the death of a sibling, carrying out what the legal system had failed to do through music. Others claim that the violence Big Juke may have planned had unavoidable repercussions for his own family, citing the purported hit list and the testimony that implicated him. The argument over who was truly at fault in the music CMG PRE feud has rekindled with new vigor. Every old complaint and accusation was revived and re-examined. This is an indisputable fact that no one on either side of this dispute music can dispute. Their debts are always collected by the streets. On that awful November day in 2021, young Dolph paid with his life at Makita's Cookies, cut down during a smoke break at a funeral. Big Juke paid with his life outside music, restaurants, and Perrin. Yodi has now given up his empire, his freedom, and his meticulously crafted legacy. In an unrecoverable moment of rage and grief, everything was thrown away in a prison visiting room. After music like this, the Memphis rap scene will never be the same. This battle has permanently damaged a city that gave rise to 36 Mafia, 8 Ball and MJG, Project Pat, and numerous other legends. Who won the beef is no longer the question, because it's obvious that there are no winners when you look at the men incarcerated and the bodies on the ground. How many more bodies will fall is the only question left. How many more lives are going to be lost? Before this cycle of violence mercifully ends, how many more families will be shattered? Music. And that question is still unanswered tonight as the sun sets over Memphis and the city's skyline fades music into darkness. The streets are waiting. They are observing, and they will always remember everything music. Please click on any of the cards on your screen if you like this video.